Hello and welcome, and just as a little break from the ASA content, here are 10 Arc creatures with great special abilities. In at number 10 is the Basilosaurus, and you may think this thing does not have an ability at all, but actually it does have one. Not the greatest ability you'll ever find, but it is just such a good creature, it is definitely deserving of this list, and its ability definitely isn't one which is terrible. This will passively craft oil over a period of time, and oil is a very useful resource, and if you can just get some extra oil by this thing just passively making it, that is a really great thing to have. Also, if you're wondering about just when I will upgrade my B-roll to ASA, in the coming weeks you will notice some of the creatures will transition into ASA B-roll if you are wondering about that. And yes, the Basilosaurus is by far the best ocean tame out there in my opinion, and I think at some point everyone should tame a Basilosaurus. They're just so good for doing cave runs, they're just great for traversing the ocean as well, as they're immune to like eel stings and jellyfish stings. Really a great Arc creature to have, which everyone should tame at some point. In at number 9 is the Argy, and yet again another great creature with a great special ability of when this thing will eat a dead corpse, it will regen really quickly, and it's not really a special ability for this next thing, but it does have weight reduction on things like metal, crystal and obsidian, and especially in ASA right now where you can't really level speed. You can obviously do it on single player if you enable that in the settings. The Argy is really great for traversing the metal down from the mountains, as the Pteranodon's weight just really can't keep up, and nothing can really travel at a reasonable enough speed anymore for most things to get around, and the Argy is just such a good shout, and it is really great on ASA. And so far I haven't tamed an Argy yet on ASA, but it is definitely on the list at some point. Currently right now I'm looking towards taming a Carno. But also the Argy is great at picking up creatures as well. This thing can store creatures in its beak. Well, not store, it can carry them. And it can carry creatures in its arms as well. And players, if you know you were traveling around with a friend and you just need to pick them up to take them somewhere, definitely a useful ability for a creature to have. Next up, we have the Bufo. Another really great tame, which again is going to be extremely useful in ASA, even though this isn't an ASA video. But in terms of its special ability, when this thing does eat an insect, it will gather cementing paste from it, which is extremely useful. And considering the abundance of insects that are still on ASA, and the fact that insects are actually easier to kill on ASA, as insects do not have levels anymore, this thing is even more useful, as you can't have like level 1000 Meganeuras chasing after you. You don't need the strongest beetles out there now, and the insect cave is significantly easier on ASA than in the original cave on Ark Survival Evolved, and that makes this thing even more useful again into the future. But still, in Ark Survival Evolved as well, this is an extremely useful creature for that purpose as well, as it is just the way that you can get easy, sustainable cementing paste. And also they are pretty good swimmers as well, which is just a really nice thing to have overall. It's just nice to have something which is good in the water, but it makes sense considering this thing does spawn in the swamp. Also, if you're enjoying this video so far, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, as it really does support the channel. Now, the Stego. What a creature this is, with now a wealth of abilities. It has actually had them for a while, since I think the TLC 3 update. And the ability which the Stego has is it has 3 plate modes. It has the sharpen plate, which is going to be great for gathering things like berries and dealing that damage. Then you have the heavy plate, which is used to gather things like wood and heavier resources. And then you have the hardened plate, which is great for soaking turrets on any given PvP scenario. And also there is rider protection as well, so you will get somewhat of a damage resistance when riding this thing, which no other turret soaker has and little other Arc creatures have. obviously unless you use a platform saddle on a creature, and then you can like build a literal wall to protect yourself. But I think the Mega Chelon is one of the only other Arc creatures which has damage reduction as well. And again, with that Stego with the sharpened plate, you have yourself an insane ability, which essentially what you can do is inflict bleed damage onto other Arc creatures, and it will keep them in place and it will drain their stamina as well. An extremely useful thing if a player is trying to kill you, as this thing has mobility around its whole body with that tail, so you can just quickly get someone off of you if they are annoying you, and it's great for attacking creatures as well. It's a really quick, easy, effective way of destroying dinos easily and effectively. Now, the Snowout can be found on Extinction, its home map, or obviously Fjorda now, and it is a creature which I think every Arc player should tame at some point, and I can't wait for this thing to come into ASA, as it's going to make the game so much nicer. And yes, cryopods aren't in ASA at the moment, but when the Snowout is introduced, when Extinction is introduced into ASA, cryopods will be available on ASA. It's not like they're not being added into the game. And again, these things are going to be useful in that map as well because of their gliding ability. But in terms of their usual abilities, these things have a wealth of them. They are so densely packed with abilities. The first one, which you're seeing now, which is that glide ability, which makes this thing able to zip across the map with absolute ease, and it's really satisfying to do at the same time. Their second ability being a heat-seeking ability, where they can see any creature, or I think that's pretty much just creatures, isn't it? Any creature that is giving off heat, which is every Arc creature, you'll be able to spot them, and it will kind of seek through grounds and foliage, so you can see if a creature is hiding in a bush if you can't find one. And their third and main ability is the fact that they can heal other creatures up. It will use stamina, which is why you'll need to level up your stamina, but it will also heal any type of creature, which no other healing creature does, as the Daedon will only heal your tames. And this can be really useful if you're trying to tame an Arc creature and their health is just really low because you've shot loads of tranks into it. I need to heal it up quickly so it won't lose so much torpor, and then you won't be waiting for absolutely ages. And also, these Snowout pellets are great for increasing the loot drop chances on gachas. You can get some insane loot on your gachas once you feed them Snowout pellets. Speaking of the gacha, in at number 5 is the gacha, and the gacha is definitely a creature which at some point on Extinction or whatever other map you have gachas on, you should tame, as the gacha is an insane creature with, again, that a wealth of an ability, which means essentially if you feed this thing Snowout pellets, you'll get insane loot out of it. And it can also just generally produce resources as well, and if you get really lucky, you can get one which can produce element dust or black pearls or things like that. These creatures are going to be your best friend on Extinction, and they are a bit of a cheat, and this is kind of when Arc turned from being really difficult to becoming somewhat of an easier game. You can definitely tell with Extinction and the Genesis expansions, albeit their bosses may be some of the hardest out there, the maps are definitely easier, with Gen 2 being the easiest out of those 3. Now, the Deinonychus is by far probably one of the easiest carnivores to tame out there. In my opinion, it's probably even easier than the Raptor, depending on the map. And the Deinonychus' main ability is just the amount of climbing, mobility, and damage these things can deal. And also, they don't take full damage as well, which is just a really nice bonus to have. And their first ability being that the fact that they can grapple onto large creatures and just suck all of the blood out of them, dealing that bleed ability. Obviously, it doesn't suck all the blood out of them, but blood spews everywhere, so I just use that terminology. And then it's so easy to kill creatures with this ability. It's insane how quickly you can kill creatures, and this works on bosses too. And I'm pretty sure this is the only creature which has that ability where it works on bosses as well. And they're great pack creatures as well, having the pack buff obviously, and they're creatures which will be your best friend out there. And again, talking about mobility, these things do not take full damage, which you do not have to worry about. But if you were wondering about the little glitch in Ark where you dismount just before you hit the ground, that still works in ASA as well. So unlike my previous predictions, this isn't going to be the biggest thing, but it is still a very, very nice creature comfort to have. And again, as you can see here, it can just parkour up walls and do an insane amount of climbing and just things like that. This is really a creature at some point in Ark which you should tame, and considering it spawns on Valguero, it's on a free DLC map. In at number 3 is the Velonasaur, and what a creature this is again. It just seems to be loads of the creatures on extinction just have really cool abilities. Again, Gen 2 creatures do have a lot of cool abilities as well, same as Gen 1, but there are more extinction creatures on this list. And in terms of the Velonasaur's abilities, this thing is a literal mobile moving turret. It can just shoot spines out of its face, and it's so nice to have, as it's a really great long range creature. And I wouldn't recommend using the turrets this close to a creature, but I wanted to demonstrate that ability. And you kind of get a bit of a nice side view as well, which is pretty cinematic, and you'll want to level up that stamina, of course, to actually allow you to fire more bullets. Sadly, leveling up your melee will not increase the damage of these, but they're still so overpowered anyway. It doesn't really matter, and you can level up that stamina and just punch so many things, and the fire speed of these things is absolutely insane. But in this close proximity, you'll probably want to just use the general hack and slash abilities, or you can obviously use the kind of sliding ability. They'll kind of just shake their bodies around and just shoot spines off of them, which is a pretty fun, cool ability to do, and is actually one that's actually pretty useful in close combat, and it deals a lot of damage. In at number 2 is the Shadow Mane, and what a creature this is. Obviously spawning on Gen 2, but you can find it on Fjorda as well, and this is by far one of the most densely packed creatures in terms of their special abilities. The first being that they can kind of teleport around. I think they can teleport around in some sort of way. Either way, they can shoot across the map with incredible speeds, and they can jump to great heights too, as you'll see here, and they just have so much mobility, far higher than the Deinonychus has, but it is also a far harder tame. And they also have the pack buff as well. They have the hydration buff, which I'm pretty sure only it and the Spino has, which makes sense because its command name is Lionfish Lion, so it's a bit of a lionfish really. It's great at swimming in the water, and we can't forget the fact that this thing can also turn invisible as well, and it can charge up its damage over time. The Shadow Mane is just such a useful creature in any environment. It's pretty good at traveling, it's pretty good at traveling underwater, and it's pretty good in the sky as well for those moments of airtime. A really cool creature to tame. But before we get into number 1, I just have a quick honourable mention, which is the Thyla. This is a really great creature spawning in the Redwoods biome, and it is so densely ability packed. And in at number 1 is the Desmodus. Obviously this thing first spawned on Fjorda, so it's going to be a while before we see this in ASA. But still, in ASE, we have the luxury of the Desmodus, and this thing has so many incredibly useful abilities, and it is by far the best creature out there with special abilities. But what would you expect? I did put it in the number 1 slot. Its first ability being that this thing shares the glide ability, like the Griffin and the Snowout. And again, even like compared to the Snowout and the Griffin, it feels even more refined. The Griffin being the least refined in terms of the glide ability, the Snowout feeling smoother, and the Desmodus feeling somehow even smoother. And also the Desmodus can grapple onto walls too, if that's something, you know, you want to endeavour with, and it actually is a pretty useful ability, which you'll find some uses for as well. It shares that ability with the Tappy Jara. And also it can craft Sanguine Elixir, which is a really great thing to have, and it's an absolute hack for taming, and it can also turn invisible in the nighttime. Because I was in extinction, that didn't work properly. But anyway, that was the end of today's video. And what did you think of this list? And did you agree with this list? If not, or if you did, still comment down below your 10 favourite creatures with special abilities. And I will see you all later.